Hello and welcome to this short introduction to one of the two first-year culture modules that our students here in the French section take in their first year. It's a French history course entitled The Making of Modern France. My name is Sophie Hayward and I'm one of the French historians in the department. I work on the history of children's books and childhood, especially around 1968 and in the Cold War. And I teach this course jointly with my colleague Marjorie Gerhardt, who's a specialist in World War I. You can find out more about us and our research if you look at the staff profiles on the department's website. So, what's this module about? Well, the course is designed to introduce our first year students to modern French history, to really give them a solid grounding and understanding of modern French history. So we look in the main at the great events that have really marked French history and politics, including the Great Revolution of 1789, but also things like France's experience in the two world wars of the 20th century, including their defeat and subsequent collaboration with the Nazis. And we also look at the history of France as an imperial power, indeed the second largest empire after Great Britain in the 19th century. So we look at how they built up that empire, and then at the bitter wars of decolonisation that followed in the 20th century, and the legacies these have had for French politics and society. But we also are interested in culture and society and ideologies and movements that have really shaped French politics and society and culture. So things like the rise of organised feminism, and then also, for example, the counterculture of 1968, and thinking about the ways in which these have shaped modern France and its culture. Developing an understanding of these events, ideas and experiences forms an important part of the building blocks that will help students of French to gain a deeper understanding of the language and the people who speak it, but also to give you an important kind of understanding and grounding for the more specialised modules that you will take in subsequent years. So how do we teach and assess this course? Well, the main aim of the course is to help students to develop their historical knowledge, but also crucially to develop their skills as historians, as well as linguists. So our focus is on analytical and critical thinking and how to develop these and express them both in presentation and discussions in class, but also in written essays and exams. So in terms of teaching, we use lectures. They're designed to stimulate your interest in the topic and give you some basic ideas and questions to help guide your further reading and research onto the topic. But also more broadly, I guess, the lectures offer you examples of how historians have thought about and analysed the topic. So we often ask, what questions are historians asking about this topic? And what different ways have there been of interpreting their importance and their legacy, and so on. Then in the seminar, we explore the topic further. They're based around group discussions, so that might be the whole class together, or quite often in smaller groups, and then we all discuss them together. To help our students develop their understanding of their topic and their analytical skills, we might read what we call primary sources, which is to say evidence from the time, such as, for example, the Déclaration des Droits de l'Homme, one of the founding declaration documents of the modern French Republic. Or we could do something like look at colonial propaganda posters to think about how they portray things like race or justify French violence against colonised peoples. We also set reading from specific texts by historians to, again, discuss their arguments and think about how they have interpreted the topic and if there are any arguments, as there usually are. The assessment is based around essays and exams. So you submit one essay overall that is worth 40% of your grade. We use the seminars as an opportunity to prepare you for thinking about how to write essays and offer you the chance to write a short practice essay in the first term. We also suggest to students that they submit 2 essays, one in the first term and then one in the spring term. And you finally, for your overall grade, just submit the best mark, the best essay. The idea here is to give you as much practice and feedback on essay writing as possible. And then the final 60% of the grade is based on the end of term exam, where you have 2 questions, one on topics from each term. And again, we do a lot of work in seminars and lectures to try to help you prepare for the exam, and we offer revision classes in the summer term before the exams. So now I'm just going to talk you through briefly an example of one kind of seminar discussion to give you a sense of the sort of things that we do in class. I'm going to use the example of feminism. So in the lecture, I will have talked to my students about the position of French women in society after the revolution and why we see the rise of organised feminism and what shape that takes. And I'll have introduced you to some of the big ideas and arguments about French feminism. Then in the seminar, we get the chance to really tease some of those ideas out and discuss them at length in class together. So it's centred around this idea of asking, why is it that French women didn't get the vote until 1944, which is quite a lot later than in Britain and America, say, where women got the vote after World War I. When we compare French feminism and British feminism, or suffragism, the struggle for the vote in particular, it's really interesting because you can see there's a huge difference in methods and approaches. So French feminists really try, generally speaking, to work through the male political order. They're very closely linked to the Republican movement, to the Republic as it is. And so you see very little of the violence and challenge to the male political order that, say, you see in Great Britain, where they resort to violence, and you see women bombing the houses of politicians, or even famously in the case of Emily Wilding Davis, she throws herself in front of the king's horse and is killed. Here I've got a picture of a French feminist of a scandalous event where Hubertine Auclair has overturned a ballot box. Shock horror. Which leads us to think about, well, why were French feminists more moderate? What was the context for this? And we want to think about French political culture and why French feminists want to work with the male political order. And we also ask, which kind of brings us to think about, well, is moderation necessarily a bad strategy? So what we do is we use French feminist newspaper articles, speeches, and also discuss different historians' readings of feminism to think about this together and debate these ideas. And it offers us a way of thinking not just about feminism in comparative perspective, but also strengthening our understanding of the French political system. And it's a really good way as well of seeing how historians emphasise very different factors in their analysis and can come to very, very different conclusions.